Okay, welcome. My name is Jerry Cabazuto from godislovetruthlife.com or godislovetruthfreedom.com because, oh, sorry. Uh, my other YouTube tab was, this is my first time live streaming on my channel. So we're just going to go with the flow. Yeah, godislovetruthfreedom.com because a life without freedom is not a life worth living. And I'm here with my co-host Kevin Kelso, and we have an amazing guest, Charles Reagan Swindoll. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello. Hello. Glad to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yay.
Glad to have you. Glad to
Yeah,
be
and
here
this
with
is
you all.
Yeah.
for sure. And before I forget, I would love to plug any websites, Chuck, if you want to talk about
Yeah,
those.
yeah, everyone. Yeah, if you want to see my work, I'm on X. I'm also on YouTube and I'm on Rumble. And it's all under my name, Chuck Swindoll Jr. I think my X is under a weird name, but you'll find me. I've got the same photo for all of my sites. So once you find that photo on Rumble or YouTube or whatever, you'll find me. And yeah, sometimes when you search for me on YouTube, you'll come up with my dad. My dad's a really famous guy, and a lot of folks that try and find me get frustrated because I have the same name as him. So sometimes I can get hidden under his work because he is a major dude, has an international ministry that he's a part of, and so it's a huge group. And so with the same name as him, there's a lot of confusion there. But he doesn't have long hair like me, and he's about 90, so you won't mistake us
Oh,
two.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I don't really have like a agenda for this conversation other than to just promote your work. But since you did mention your dad, I'm curious about your relationship with him now and what he thinks of your
Mm,
work and
mm.
how what is that like?
It's very
If you don't mind
challenging.
my
I
asking,
don't
yeah,
mind at
okay.
all. I don't mind at all. Okay, so my father and I were very close for very long. I was raised in the church. I was raised a Christian. I was a Christian until I was 40. I became a Christian when I was 4. So I was totally and completely immersed and indoctrinated into it. And so that's how I lived my life. And so I worked with my father for about 15 years at a church. It was called Stonebriar Community Church. He actually just resigned. He just retired this last September. And he and I worked together for 15 years there. And it was some of the greatest moments of my life. I have nothing but fond memories working with my father. But at the end of that tenure, about 13 years into it, I contracted cancer. And I had the same cancer as Lance Armstrong. And so I decided to battle that naturally. And that was really sort of the beginning of my having, I don't know if it's a rift, but a really strong disagreement with my father because I approached cancer fighting it naturally. I used
Hmm.
naturopathy, I used acupuncture, I used holistic medicine, plant essential oils, these kind of things to kill the source of the tumor and the reason why I was growing a tumor. And then once I killed the tumor, I then had it removed. It had really expanded, and there was no way for me to be able to carry that the rest of my life. It's a lot like people who have a kidney that dies and it just sits in the body and begins to
Hmm.
decompose. And that's very dangerous because one of the most toxic molecules in the blood is decaying tissue and dead cancer cells.
Right.
And so I had it removed conventionally with a conventional surgery, and that was it. I've lived a holistic lifestyle since. And so to get back to it, my father had really, really strong disagreements with that. He wanted me to just go to the hospital and do what they say, and that was it. And it wasn't anger or anything like that. He just loved me so much, and he didn't see the viability in what I was
Hmm.
doing. And so this agreement began to form. And as I went through cancer, it was about a year and a half battle. I also used Gerson therapy and coffee enemas. And so it's a very physical battle that I had with cancer. A lot of routines my
I see.
acupuncturist gave me involved stretching and doing certain activities. I had to wear pajamas tonight with long sleeves, socks, and a hat on every night when I went to bed to stay warm. One of the Eastern medicine treatments is you are always warm and nothing enters your mouth that is less than 98 degrees. And so you always are in an environment of a lot of warmth. And so it's difficult to do that, giving up ice water, giving up anything cold, and having to go to bed every night wearing long johns basically is frustrating. And so it was like that. And so going through that and then not knowing if I'm going to die that night, doctors, basically all the Western doctors rejected me because I wouldn't follow their protocol. And so I wasn't able to really tightly monitor what was happening. And so that developed a lot of insecurity. And so that actually turned me to the book called The Wisdom of Insecurity by Alan Watts. And when I began to really look into the work of Alan Watts and Joseph Campbell, this was while I had cancer. It was mind-boggling because the fighting cancer sort of puts you in a different mindset than just the normal everyday life. And so when it's a bit like being on a constant trip. And so you see life differently. You see everything that's going around you differently. You see your relationships differently because you stop aligning everything to your belief system. And so since I'd always been a Christian, I had always aligned things into a Christian context. And so all the conclusions I found and all the directives I found was through the Bible, was through normal Christian circles. And so when I had cancer and there was a tremendous rejection from a lot of the circles that I had always looked to, it was like, what's going on here? And so I then began to do a really deep dive into psychology and the psychology that comes with Western religion and the idea of believing that I was a sinner and what this did to me psychologically and believing that I was separate from God and I had to believe a certain way in order to have a relationship with God. And there's a lot of mechanical gymnastics that go along with Western religion. And watching Joseph Campbell and Alan Watts and reading the material began to break down all of these binds that held me into a religious context. And when I left that context, that was really the beginning of mine and my father's separating further and further because my father, he's been a Christian since he was a boy, and he was in his 80s or nearing his 80s when all this was going on with me, 70s. And so he's very set in his ways. And so when I began to think outside the Christian box, and I told him one time when I sat down with him, I had just finished the process. I had just beat cancer, and his ministry, a lot of people in his ministry wanted to have an update on my life. And so he asked me, he said, hey, would you mind? And he didn't know that I was going through all the stuff with Campbell and Watts. He didn't realize that I was going, like I was basically leaving Christianity is what was happening. He didn't know this. And
Right.
so I was in my office. It was a Saturday. And I was working, and I loved working alone on Saturdays. I was in charge of all the tech at the church, and so I would prepare the sanctuary and all the stuff for the event that was going to be coming up on Sunday. And so I worked Saturdays on my own. And he came down, and it was like 2 p.m, and he sat down, and he officed right next to me. We were tight. We went to lunch every week together, and we were very close. And so he came to my office. And he sat down. He said, hey, Chuck, I just got the letter that you wrote, and it's great. I really appreciate you writing it. Thank you. But he said, there's a massive concern I have with this letter. I said, okay. And he said, well, you never one time mentioned Jesus ever in your entire letter. And he said, I just don't understand why you've done that. And then I said to him, was the one thing I guess that really upset him. But I said to him, I said, well, Dad, that's because Jesus didn't have anything to do with my healing from cancer. And when I said that to him, he looked at me, and there was both a fire as well as a enormous WTF, like, what the hell did you just say? And he said, I don't understand that. And I said, well, I've really been in a transformative process throughout this ordeal, Dad. And I mean, I was the one who was doing the coffee enemas. I was the one who was taking the supplements. I was going to see the acupuncturist. I was seeing the naturopathic doctor every week. I was the one who was finding out about my health. I was finding out all the things that need to be done. And these are all things that I am responsible for, that I have to do, and that, it doesn't have anything to do with praying to Jesus or anything, that stuff. I mean, this is work in my life that I'm doing. And
Right.
so I just
Right.
didn't see
Right.
it that way. And this really led to a conversation with him that I can't talk about. It's quite private, but it led to a very heavy conversation with him. And that was really the beginning of the end and of my closeness to him.
Oh, I'm
And from that
sorry.
point forward, there was an
I'm sorry.
enormous rift that was there. And this actually further pushed me away from Christianity, because I'm just like, look, if a religion is going to separate me from my father, I want nothing to do with that. Nothing. And because I love my father and I don't need some religion, some God, some entity or whatever to intermediate with that. I mean, I
Yeah.
love him unconditionally. And so the fact that I don't buy into his religious context anymore should not be a separating factor between us. And this was really when I began to understand how much of an illusion I had been living under being a Christian my whole life. In that it's a religion that talks about relationship and pulling people closer together and pulling closer to God and these kind of ideals. It preaches this. But on the inside, deep down, no, it's a belief system, and you align to that belief system. And if you are not in that belief system, you are out of the circle of trust. And that's what I began to find happening, was that all these relationships that I built my entire life, because I no longer was allegiant to Western religion, and I no longer believed that I was a sinner, and I no longer believed that I was fallen. I no longer believed that I was separate from God. I completely identified with nature, and I saw myself as a nature creature. And so I was like, if all of these people are going to reject me because I don't believe like them, well, that's a cult. That's a cult. That's what cult members do. And I was
Yep.
like, well, this is horrendous. And that really triggered me to understanding, okay, what is the psychology going on here? Because if people will no longer have that much of a relationship and will basically abandon someone that doesn't believe like them anymore, I want to understand the psychology of that and why a person would do that. And so then I began to go down this rabbit hole of psychology and understanding the psychology of religion and what happens to people when they buy into a belief system and what happens to their perspective. And what I discovered about myself was I have been living in a very small perspective, a very small golf ball sized world. And when I discovered that, I had been living like that my whole life. And that was where all my friends were. That was where all my relationships, like all of these people are in that world. I then began a mission. It was like, okay, from now on, my mission in life is to try and relate to these people to help them understand you are in a cult. You are in a belief system. I know that you don't like to hear that. I know you don't like to think that. I know you don't like that idea that Christianity is a cult, but I'm here to tell you it is. They believe in one book. They follow one man. They have one set of bounds and edicts and guidance that you must follow in order to have a relationship to God. And they talk about having unconditional grace. And it's like, no, you can only access that grace if you believe appropriately, meaning if you believe the way the religion says. And if you
Right.
don't believe that way, then you can't access the grace. And I was like, that's not grace. Grace doesn't have any requirements. Grace doesn't require you to believe a certain things in order to access it. It doesn't require you to follow into a certain metric in order to qualify for it. And so that's when it really became clear that when you're in these kind of small worlds, there's a whole vocabulary that goes along with it. And most people, and it was certainly true for me, most people that are indoctrinated into that vocabulary cannot understand any language that isn't a part of that vocabulary. And so you sound like you're talking Greek to somebody when you say, Jesus had nothing to do with my healing from cancer. I may as well talk German to my father at that point. And so that's really what I'm trying to do in all of my work and everything that all of these social medias that I'm on is to simply be a seed of light that everyone who is within these religious contexts, I don't care if it's Islam, Jewish, even Buddhists, any of these, if you're inside of these contexts and you think anyone that doesn't align to those contexts is wrong, is outside truth, can't be reached, is evil or whatever, you need to understand that that is psychologically inappropriate. That is living inside a very small compartmentalized box. And your relationship and your relation to nature and those around you will always be compromised as long as you stay inside of that box. And so I'm not trying to be hateful or mean or anything like that. I'm just simply trying to offer a larger perspective so that people, as we walk into this great awakening, that people understand the Great Awakening is not an exoneration of your religion. It is not an exoneration of your belief system. So if you think the Great Awakening is all about Jesus coming back and everyone's going to be saved, I'm really sorry to inform you that is not what the Great Awakening is about. It is about perspective. It is about opening your eyes and your mind to a larger world than the one you were raised in. So it is very important for all of us to take self-responsibility for our own perspectives, and no one can hand you a perspective. You have to see it yourself. And so with this great awakening, it is vitally important for each and every person to step back from their life, from their thinking, all that stuff, and say, what am I actually looking at? What am I actually believing? Because the world is larger than any religious system. It is larger than any belief. I promise you, nature is much larger than anything you could get your hands around. So thinking you could get your hands around and fully understand nature, God, yourself, these kind of things, and have it all in one concise book, have it all in one concise way, is like saying, okay, let me introduce you to my friend, and you hand someone a book. A book does not define a friend. A book does not define a person. A book does not define God. People, nature, God, these things are outside of those contexts. And so if you're going to understand anything, it's going to be through experience. And so that's what we all need to be doing during this great awakening, is understanding I need to expand my experience. I need to expand my perspective so that I can walk into the great awakening with no anxiety, with clutching to nothing, holding to no belief system, and saying, I am a free individual. My heart is free, and I'm walking into this heart space as a free person. And that perspective is totally different than someone who says, the Great Awakening is just about my religion coming forward and everyone believes like me, and then it's great. That's really not going to be it. So that's why I'm so motivated to do this stuff, is because basically the Western United States is about 80% Christian. And every single one of these people, or most every one of them, think that the Great Awakening constellates Christianity. And it doesn't. It's going to absorb it. It's just religion is going to die as we move further and further into these larger contexts that don't fit into any religion. And so I've talked about that kind of thing in my videos. And if you guys ever, I know you've watched some of, but if you ever watch my work, you'll notice that this is the theme. This is what I'm talking about, is opening perspective. And I think it's great, actually. And this is one of the cool things I want to mention, Jerry and Kevin, is that you guys are tied into Mark Passio.
Yes.
And Mark Passio was one of the early people that I listened to. And he's
That's
a
how I
very
met.
strong figure. When you listen to Mark, I mean, you're going to get a dose that day. And so that's a little bit strong for some people. But what I like is that Mark understands this stuff. Mark understands religious context. He understands the traps that are inside of Western religion. And he does a very good job helping people understand nature, that you're a nature creature, and that there are natural laws that are a part of life and a part of you. And integrating these things will lower your anxiety and will help you understand, I am an enigma. I am living in an enigma, and there's not going to be totally got it all together in that kind of space. It's going to be a place of experience. It's going to be a place of spontaneity. It's going to be a space of revelation and rapture. And that's what you get in a space that you don't know. And that's why it's so important. That's why insecurity is so important. Like Alan Watts talked in his book, not having it all dialed in and tracked down, and to live your life free and not having to align to any one system, but aligning to your experience and what you know and understand through love and the heart and the chakras and these kind of things. And so that's, that's really great that you guys are tied into him, because I don't think anyone in my audience, or very few in my audience, know anything about Mark Passio. So it's a good opportunity to just let folks know. Mark is a great guy in bringing a different perspective. He's going to be too strong for some people, probably for a lot of people, but he's really great in just giving you the hard facts without any apologies. And I think that's important. And that's going to speak to some people in this Great Awakening, because everybody's going to have their own unique experience. They're going to have the people that they totally resonate with. And they're going to have people that are like, you know what, that guy's a freak. I'm not going to ever listen to him again. And so that's just all part of it. Welcome to life. Welcome to life. It's okay. It's okay that we don't agree. It's okay that we have disagreements. That's healthy. It's really good that we don't live in a echo chamber, and we just are all telling each other what we want to hear and what is all nice and really fits in well. It's real important to be courageous and listen to people who don't say things that you like to hear. And it's really important to not be reactive and not live a life that is in basically response, but rather being proactive by being open to anything that comes in front of you and not being afraid of that. And so, yeah, I just wanted to mention, I think it's great that you guys are tied into Mark Passio. And if you ever see him, tell him I said hello and thank you for the positive influence he's had in my life.
Oh my God. Wow. Yeah, well, so.
Well, I got interested in Mark Passio by listening to your work.
That's amazing. Is that right? That's amazing.
You see, what drew me to your work is that you had studied Joseph Campbell, and that helped me get out of a sect that had a lot of, for all practical purposes, behaved like a cult. And then you mentioned somebody else. What was the other?
Alan
Watts.
About the spider. You go to Alan Watts, Mark Passio, and I thought this just resonates so much with me. I said, why did I leave his work so long ago? I just thought that I just wanted to adventure and see other. I thought, it's just it's out of the scope. I don't want to go there. I mean, it's just my own kind of dark shadow I have to deal with. Anyway, it's then I got to meet Jerry and what on earth is happening.com, and we're taking this course on how to start our own media station. So I think it's so important to have, when it comes to natural law, for everybody to get that knows it to get out there and do it.
Yeah, it reminds me.
And not put it all on Mark Passio, just because that's too much of a. Go ahead.
Oh, well, yeah. I think what you were saying is, for the Great Awakening to occur, in me and Kevin's meeting and taking the How to Become the True Media course, which is starting today, actually. So I think enrollment already ended, but who knows, you might still be able to join on howtobecomethitruemedia.com. But that class was really instrumental for me in realizing that, like, it's not good enough to just listen to this truth content. I need to be part of that stream. I need to add my voice. And I think each of us come from different communities. I came from a very similar Christian upbringing, but also my parents were in the medical industrial complex, and so there's that layer of indoctrination as well, and just unlearning and peeling back those religions, because Kevin and I talk a lot about on our show that, like, we're in a worldwide cult. Like, there's just so many layers. There's the and you mentioned this in your work, Chuck, there's the medical industry, the science, and how it's taught in general, religions, indoctrination in the schools, the government. It's all part of that. And I think this segues really well into your recent work with the God Eaters series, which we're both huge fans of.
Thank you. Yeah, the God Eaters series.
Oh man, that was excellent.
Incredible.
I listened to that so many times.
Thank you so much. I have actually been shocked at the response to the God Eaters. I'm so happy.
Really?
Oh my God, I'm so happy that folks resonate with it. and that I've been able to present the material, because it's a lot of material, and I've been able to present the material in a way that folks are okay with. It's sometimes in long form videos like that, my videos are often well over an hour. It's hard to hold the attention of folks. And so what I've tried to do with the series is just have a lot of content in this, excuse me, I've tried to have just a lot of facts and a lot of evidence of those facts presented in the series, always providing links for what I'm finding and showing folks the patterns. And I found that as folks have identified these patterns, that they can relate then to the world I'm describing in the videos. And they, in their own life, again, here's personal experience, in their own personal experience, they see evidences of the stuff that I talk about, that the CIA isn't your friend, the FBI is not your friend, the medical system in the West is not your friend. These enterprises are not in it for your betterment. They're in it to control you. They want you in it, but they don't want you in it free. They want you in it controlled. Following orders, doing as told, obeying, getting in line. That is what these industrial complexes want. And I know, and everybody everyone knows this as a human being. You didn't come to this planet. You didn't come to this planet to be controlled. You didn't come to this planet to obey. You didn't come to this planet to fall in line. You didn't come to this planet to be underneath orders and to be indoctrinated. That is not why you're here. You are here to be free. You are here to experience. You are here to learn. You're here to expand your consciousness. You're here to be a light to others. You're here to be a light in your own life. You're here to help others find better understanding. I mean, that is why we're here, to participate, to take self-responsibility for your own mind, for your own behaviors, and to participate in a holistic, nature-based way, because you're a nature-based creature. You're a nature creature, to participate in these capacities. And the reason our society has gotten so crazy is that everybody, like you just said, has been indoctrinated by these really, really foul systems that pose themselves as humane, that pose themselves as helpful, but actually they're extremely destructive to relationships and to the individual. And I mean, anybody who's in the Western medical system will know you get sicker. If you follow the protocols and you go get your chemotherapy and so forth, you might have a good response or result up front or quickly or whatever, but the long term, it poisons you.
That's so true.
Long term petromedicines poison your liver. Let me say it. It poisons your liver. Long term use of petrochemicals poison your body. And so, you might use a steroid that'll help your skin problem or whatever, but down the road, because you were using these false medicines, you will get sick. It will toxify you, and you will have to do things like coffee enemas to detox your body so that you don't get sick down the road. And all of these systems, religious systems, political systems, medical systems, they make you sick long term. And that's what I was talking about earlier with the religion. Religion makes you sick long term because it puts you inside a very tight context. And it makes you kind of crazy because anybody who doesn't fit in that context with you, you reject, you dismiss, you turn away. And that's not healthy. That's not a humane way of behaving. And so people have to become aware of this stuff, and it's hard work. And that's why my God Eaters series and my Nature as Identity series are so long, is because it is hard work peeling out the layers that you have put on day after day, year after year, believing the same things, following the same orders, falling into the same lines. And if you've been in that for 40 years, you're not going to get over that in 40 hours or 40 days. It's going to take you years of peeling and peeling to get rid of all of these assumptions you have based your life upon. And it is really hard to do. And so that's why I'm doing these videos, is that anybody who will have the courage to hear an alternate perspective about religion, about these different things I mentioned, if they're willing to do that, you then avail yourself of a different perspective. And a basic common sense is to understand having a larger perspective is a better idea than having a small perspective. I mean, that's common sense. And so if I only engaged in the context of my perspective, you see, I'm never expanding my perspective. But if I start walking into rooms, I start walking into fields that are different than my norm, well, I'm availing myself. And it's scary though, because it's uncomfortable to be in an unknown space because we fear what we don't know. And that harkens back, Kevin, to the story you mentioned about the spider with Alan Watts. And the gal that was afraid of black widow spiders, and his advice wasn't to fumigate the house and call in, you know, some person that's going to spray chemicals all over the place. His idea was go right into it. Dive right into it, man. Start surrounding yourself with information about black widow spiders, and that understanding, that knowledge will free you from the fear you have of the unknown, because the reason you're afraid of black widow spiders is because you don't understand them. You don't know them. But if you learn to know them, just like learning a different context for life, this will expand your horizons. And she actually ended up collecting black widow spiders. She became like this big black widow spider fan. And that is exactly the joy that occurs when you fill your life with larger and larger perspectives. You will find that life doesn't give you anxiety. It actually gives you motivation. It doesn't put you into terror. It actually puts you into inspiration. And this freeing aspect is only available, though, if you're courageous enough to walk outside of your context. And so, for an example, until my father is willing to walk out of the religious context that he's in, there will continue to be a separation between us. I don't want the separation. He doesn't want the separation. But the bottom line is, if you're caught in a very tight context, you will remain separated because you're tight in your little tight world. But if you begin to break out of that world and break out of that context, you yourself free yourself. And no one can hand that to you. You have to do the work. You have to go out and be courageous, get out on the football field and start tackling, start doing it, start participating and risking your health. Seriously, risking your health in order to be outside of your context. And that is really what's going on here. And I don't say risking your health in a negative sense. I mean, risking your health in the sense of, if you're caught up in a really tight religion and you leave that religion, you're going to find that your relationships will all change. What you eat will change. Where you go will change. What you watch will change. What you read will change. And you will find that this will alienate you from your life. And all of your friends that you made and all the relationships you built were in that smaller context. And so it takes a courageous person to say, I'm going to risk my health, meaning leaving that context in order to have this different context. And it might cost me some of my friendships. It might cost me some family members. In other words, not being close to these people anymore. But I am willing to do that. I'm willing to risk that because I'm not willing to live in a small context anymore, because I want to be relevant to my society and I want to be relevant to the environment and myself. And I cannot do that in a tight little compartmentalized box, you know?
Ah, I love everything you said.
By the way, there was somebody that's really well said. There's somebody that was putting up a question earlier. He was asking, before I forget, I should have brought a pen. He made a good point. His name was Otto. I just saw it here. He says his question is, what made you interested in the Khazarian mafia and its influence on us still has globally? I think that's an excellent question. What made you interested in the Khazarian mafia?
Patterns. So if you
So write
watch
that
my Human Origin Theory,
series.
I never one time mention the Khazarian Mafia. But you'll notice in that set that all through the set, I'm pointing at some kind of controlling agency entity that's causing things to happen as they do on the planet. And it was in the midst of that and just after that I came across an email, or not email, a X post from Cliff High. And Cliff talked about this Khazarian mafia. And I was reading a book, and I'm going to find the name of it. Yeah, and I was reading a book. I'm going to get the name because it's important for people to have it. Hang on, let me find it. Yeah, it's red. Hang on. It's here. And it's it has, I'm not sure if I'm able to find it, but it has a story of a SRA survivor, a sexual abuse, a religious sexual abuse, a satanic sexual abuse survivor. And he tells us, Kurth Barker is the name of the author. And he tells a story about a family that is kidnapped from the beaches of California. and they're taken by this group that claims that they're going to help. It's a homeless family, and they're taken by this group, and they say, or these individuals, these psychotic individuals that
Oh,
live
I
in the
remember.
hills of
Oh
California,
gosh, I listened to that.
and
Oh
they
my gosh.
kidnap the family, and they tell the family, we're going to help you. We're going to help you find a job. We're
Right.
going to get you food. We're going to get you clothes. We're going to totally help you. I mean, isn't that what the Red Cross always says? We're going to help you. We're going to give you money, food, housing. We're totally going to come in there and help you. And this family is using the story. And so they take this homeless family from the beaches to their home. And they're the whole time telling them they're going to help them. And when they get to the house, they tie them up. They tie the family up, and they begin to adrenalize. They begin to perform an adrenochrome ceremony. So they start torturing the father in front of the mother and the children, and they begin to and they torture him for a good 20 or 30 minutes, and then they're doing all this in front of the mom and the kids, and then they go to the mom and they do that to the mom, and then they do it to the kids. They torture them, adrenalize them, drain their blood, the whole thing. The story is laid out in the book. And this book that was written years and years ago matched what uh, Cliff High was saying in his post. And I was like, holy shit, I bet you this is the controlling group. And so then I started running down the Khazarian Mafia rabbit hole. And when I was in that whole thing, I found this document by Mike Harris that basically outlined the entire history of this group, all the way back to the Amalekites. And I was like, holy smokes, like I have, like this is unbelievable. Like, I don't know anybody that knows this stuff. And I said, I'm going to make a video on this. And so I make this God Eaters 1 video, and it just blows up. I mean, I'm getting notices. You have 1,000 new emails. You have 1,000 new messages. And I'm like, what the heck? And it just exploded from there. And I began to run down this road, and eventually it led to the CIA. Eventually it leads to the FBI. It leads to all this royal bloodlines, all of these families that have been controlling the world forever, all of these groups that have been basically surreptitiously controlling the world since frickin' Babylon. And when it was all put together in front of me, I'm like, I have to tell people this. I mean, people have to know this. And as I told you when we started this interview, like, my big thing is helping others, being a light to the world, loving others, and showing them larger perspectives. And I'm like, what better way to do this than through these documents? And so that really began the whole foray into the Khazarian Mafia. And the amazing thing that I found, and this has been really great, is that there are a very small group, probably less than 1% of people who actually have known this story the whole time. A lot of Masons, people who have been formerly in the Masons and have left Freemasonry, they already know all this stuff because you're indoctrinated into this when you go into the Mason cult. And so it's been really great. One of the biggest highlights for me has been having people who were in this for decades, long before I found it, and they've come forward and have written me and have said, dude, you've hit the nail on the head. This is exactly how this group works. People need to see this information because this will educate them so they will no longer be caught in this group and their tricks and what they do to coy people into this system, or con people into the system. And so that was really the beginning for my Khazarian Mafia thing. And now I'm on that track, and I've got a number of more videos I'll be coming out with in regards to this to try and help folks see that this group has really been the controlling monsters for the world. Yeah.
And you mentioned briefly before we started going live that you have another video coming out, right?
I do. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do. And right now I'm in the midst of the CIA. And so right now, this new video I'm working on, I had an anonymous individual who doesn't want to be identified. I mean, I've told this individual countless times, look, please let me tell people who you are, because you know what. And this person's like, no, I don't want any recognition for this. So anyway, this individual, he told me about this place called Laurel Canyon. And what I began to
Oh my
connect,
gosh,
thanks
I
to
heard
this
that
person.
from Jordan Maxwell. He talks a lot about that.
Laurel Canyon was the
Jordan Maxwell talks
epicenter
about Laurel Canyon,
for
about
the
human sacrifice.
entire love movement that happened in the late 60s. Laurel Canyon is the epicenter. Most every musician that people like, I mean, I like a lot of musicians from the late 60s, and I'm a huge classic rock fan, okay? So I'm not down in this stuff at all. I'm just saying that this is the tragedy of our reality. Basically, all those groups that were coming out of the Summer of Love, that were coming out of Woodstock, that were coming out of shit, what is the name of that? Well, it's irrelevant, but we're coming out of these musical movements that were happening in the late 60s. This was all CIA. The whole thing is CIA. None of it was natural. None of it was organic. None of it. All of the people
Jordan
that...
Maxwell.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Jordan Maxwell was saying that Laurel Canyon, they did the choreography for the Third Reich. They prepared for, and this is corroborates with people like Anthony C. Sutton, who wrote the book, the connection with the Third Reich and the rise of Nazi Germany. So when I'm listening to Jordan Maxwell talk about, they're like filming it as if whoever wants to get involved, they'll fill it in like you know, you go to Kings Island, you stand in line. But they found Adolf Hitler. Now that's another story why they picked Adolf Hitler. But anyway, go on. I just wanted to say that about how far it goes back with Laurel Canyon.
Yeah, it was the springboard. And what I realized was Laurel Canyon was the springboard for all the control of the youth, the counterculture youth movement that happened. They were working, and the reason why they did it was because they're following the baby boomers. Now, at the end of the World War II, there was this massive promotion by the government and by these agencies to everybody to go out, have kids, you know, do that whole thing to build the population. And what I began to realize was that was actually a diabolical thing, because what they were doing is they knew all this boom of babies that was going to be coming from this generation. They wanted to control it. And the first salvo was Laurel Canyon. The first salvo was the Summer of Love. These were salvos for communism. And they were basically using counterculture to brainwash this youth group that they had promoted by doing the baby boom, by promoting everyone, by encouraging everyone to have babies. And they were only doing this to be able to capture that generation of people, re-educate the society, and destroy it from the inside. All of the band members, the Doors, Joni Mitchell, Bonnie Raitt, all of these people that were coming out of the 60s, these are all military family kids. If you look at the parents of these groups, they're all military. It's all psyop. And I'm going to be doing that in my next Khazarian Mafia video. Is I'm exposing this. I'm exposing the identities of the parents of all of the kids that were making the music in the 60s. And they weren't even making the music. It was the CIA. The CIA was making all of the music, writing the music, and bringing in their own musicians who were recording this shit at Laurel Canyon. And then the bands were just figureheads. It was just like the political system now. All of the people in government they're just marionettes for the Khazarian Mafia, and all of the bands that were coming out of the 60s were just marionettes of the CIA. And so it was when I began to put all this stuff together, I was like, holy God. I mean, when people find this stuff out, I mean, this changes the context of everything, because nothing is natural. The entire thing is an orchestration, the entire thing. And so nobody, I mean, they're so good. The controllers are so good. I mean, think of how hard people get caught up in religion. I mean, the controllers are very good at designing thinking methodologies that capture people, and people think, I'm in the summer of love. I am totally about love. I'm totally about connecting and all this kind of stuff. But when you go and study the psychology, it's like, no, man. No, there's no love involved in this at all. This is controlling agency. I mean, these people are destroying your life. And so the only way to render that is through a creative means of showing these patterns. And then you have to let the patterns educate people. So no one's going to believe me, but they will believe the patterns I put out if the patterns match up. And so that's what I try and do in my videos is, here are the patterns. Take these patterns yourself. You go do the work. You go do the research, and you will find when you see the patterns, you yourself will change, because you're like, I'm not going to be a part of that anymore. I'm not going to be a part of a system that controls people and harms people like this. And so, yes, Laurel Canyon, that's going to be the big, that and Satanism. I go into symbolic Satanism, and I take apart some pictures that have been released by these psychopaths, and I show you where they're symbolizing rape. I show you where they're symbolizing human sacrifice. I will show people where they are using the church
Mm-hmm.
as an instigating means to get people captured, so that when they're captured, they're totally controlled and they can't think outside of any box. And this destroys a society, because people then have their own little circle of trust, and they don't accept or allow anybody into their circle of trust. And when you separate a society like that, when you put context into a society like that that causes people to reject each other and fight, that society destroys itself. Because societies don't die from war, they die from suicide. And so this is how you get a society to
Suicide.
commit
I remember. I saw
suicide.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Right.
Wow. Yeah. You know, and in terms of like going into rabbit holes, the way I
They
see
get
it,
him
if you
to
just go
self-loathe, to hate
right,
oneself.
it doesn't matter
Yes.
what rabbit hole you go down, whether you go down the Epstein rabbit hole, the P. Diddy
Yes.
rabbit hole in more recent
Yes.
times, or just for
Yes.
me, satanic ritual abuse
Yes.
research, looking at the medical industry and how fucked up that is. You know, it
Yes.
doesn't matter which hole, it all leads to that same pit.
Yes. And something I want to mention very quickly. The medical, as you guys know, the Western medical system, okay, like any good lie, there's going to be portions within the lie that are true. Because in order to get
Mm-hmm.
some people to believe, to get people to believe things, the vast majority, you have to have some elements of truth within your lie. But overall, it's a lie. But you've got some elements there. Okay, so this is what I wanted to bring up. There are aspects to Western medicine that are actually very effective. Like if you break your arm, or if you dislocate your knee, or if you need hip replacement, Western medicine is one of the greatest things that has ever happened for mechanical problems in your body. If you got mechanical issues, they are extremely good. I mean, look at the guys in the NFL. They blow out their elbow. They come back the next year and they have an even better passing arm. I mean, there are miracles that can be done. Now, see, that is the enticing factor. That's what puts a spell onto someone, because they think, okay, well, if Western medicine can do a great job healing that quarterback's elbow, they can do a great job healing my cancer. You
Mm-hmm.
see? And that's how they capture you. And people need to understand that there are
Mm-hmm.
doctors in the Western system. Doctors, I
Good
have
point.
friends who are doctors in
That's
the
good. Well
Western medicine
said.
system. And they totally are in it for people. They're
Mm-hmm.
nice guys. They really think they're in something good. And this is because they
Mm-hmm.
are blind to the other aspects of the system that are highly toxic. And so these doctors, when you approach them, because let's say like they're a sports medicine
Right.
doctor, and they're healing people every day. I mean, they're fixing elbows, they're fixing knees. I mean, and a person comes along and says, hey, Western medicine is evil.
Mm-hmm.
That doctor's like, what the heck are you talking about? I mean, I'm healing people every day. And this is how illusion is put
Mm-hmm.
into the society. And this is why it's hard to convince
Right.
doctors and highly religious people, hey, you're a part of something extremely evil, because they've completely bought into the small little truths that are contained within this giant lie they live in. And so it's very difficult to get them to see the other portions, because
Mm-hmm.
as you guys know, when you're locked in a little box in a little room, you can't see as far as others who are not in that box. And so they don't avail themselves to any larger truth. And so it begins to promote the con within the system by those that are in it. And so that's why a pastor, a doctor, a politician, you can't reach these people, because they are totally tied into the small little aspects within the lie, and they think that is the
Mm-hmm.
thing. But it's not. It's only a little portion that they're involved in. They don't realize, hey, the larger context is actually quite toxic. And so it's important for people to understand, as you begin to expand your awareness, understand that yes, there are aspects within certain religions, within certain belief systems, that are very healthy. Loving one another. There's nothing wrong with loving one another.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with thinking and believing and acting on
Mm-hmm.
that. But that doesn't mean that everything else Christianity says is good because they say they want to love one another. There are perspectives that you have to carry to understand, hey, that's a good perspective, but you know what? It's not a good idea to think of grace as conditional, because grace isn't conditional. And so grace is right in the middle of the context of
Mm-hmm.
Christianity and those that say they want to love one another, but they have a form, they have an
Mm-hmm.
understanding of grace that is skewed. And they don't realize that it's skewed, just like the doctor doesn't realize that treating cancer with chemotherapy is skewed, because they don't see the larger context at work. And so that's why a big reason why my videos are so long is because it's giving you these different contexts and perspectives so that you can see that there are aspects that are true, but the larger context is a lie. And you have to get outside of that context in order to see the whole thing. And so that's something I wanted to mention when you were mentioning the Western medicine system. I wanted to mention that because people get really confused and they actually get angry because when I say to somebody, Jesus had nothing to do with my healing from cancer, they're offended by that because they identify through Jesus. And what they've got to understand is you are in a context. Identify with me human to human. Identify with me as a nature creature, and you will understand I don't have your bad interest in mind. I have your best interest in mind. And when I say these things, I'm not trying to con you. I'm trying to show you a larger experience so that you can free yourself, because I can't free you, and no religion can free you. You have to free yourself, and that means opening up your mind. That's what freeing yourself means. It means opening up your mind past the limitations, past the aspects that have always been your thing, and opening up past that so that you can exist in a reality that isn't tied to a particular context. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
I'm just sitting here nodding. I'm just like, yep, keep going. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know, and in thinking about my own journey, like I was very I identified as Christian for a good chunk of my life, and it served a purpose for a short term. But then at some point I realized, as I became an actual adult, that I was closing myself off from other perspectives that were going to be considered heretical. And so why I was limiting myself and closing myself off. And like you said, like it was up to me to make that choice and to take that leap. And every individual has that journey, you know. But like you said, I think religion can. And Kevin, you mentioned in previous episodes that we've done together that like that's what atheism served for you, as a temporary tool. But
It was
one
I
shouldn't
was
stay there.
stuck. No, I don't think it's a good thing. I think it's like staying in a situation where you're needing, I hate to say it, crutch. I just needed to freeze the pond because I didn't know how to get out of an area that was all liquid, you know? And but I noticed a lot of people stay in that, and then it freezes up a whole part of the portion of their brain, you know, and it can cause brain damage, you know, if you stay in the left brain. It can lead to scarcity and what other things? Like a dog chasing its own tail, it can lead to a lot of fear, you know. You need both sides of the brain, you know.
That has been, I'll mention something with that, the both sides of the brain, and that's actually what I'm going to get into in some more videos later. But is that aspect right there, is this left and right brain. One of the, okay, so follow this. This is an example I'm going to use in my next video. So look at the way Disney works. Now, as we know, Disney is a programming agency. They're here to program children, and it's pretty clear, you know, to most anybody that's done any research. Okay, so the way Disney works is it entices the child by putting them into a fantasy. So the child begins to watch the movie, and they walk into this world, and there's these fun people that are in the movie, and they have these fun, crazy personalities, and the child immediately begins to identify with them. They're laughing at the jokes, and they think it's really cute and all this kind of stuff. And this is the capture. So that the child is being captured in the midst of this happening. And then what begins to happen is, as the child begins to watch the movie longer, their left brain, which is your discerning brain, your left brain is what hears something and goes into your head, and you think, okay, do I believe that or do I not believe that? And why do I believe that or not believe that? This kind of a thing that happens in your left brain. And then your right brain takes information, raw information that comes out of that left, and it simply distributes it out. The right brain doesn't cull anything. It simply integrates the information that the left says is cool, and it just puts it into the rest of the body and the rest of reality. So your right brain is your artistic side, and it's going to be the one that's going to relate you to the ideas that are coming out of your left brain that your left brain says it's cool. Well, what happens in these movies is, because the child is so enticed, their left brain shuts off. And so the values of the characters, the statements and the life goals of the characters become the values and life goals of the child, because they no longer have their left brain discerning. Their right brain, they're just looking at the TV and it's just a trance. They're in a total trance. And if you watch the child, their
Oh
mouth
my
will be
gosh.
half open. You know, they're just totally in that
Okay.
mode. Okay. And that is programming right
Right.
there. Everything that's on that screen is going into that child's mind, and that right brain of that child now is going to integrate. And as you see now with the Disney stuff, all these left side ideas. And the child then begins to integrate. Okay, well, what that character in the movie likes, I like. And what they want to do with their life,
Mhm.
I want to do with my life. And the child can no longer differentiate fantasy from reality. And the movie ends, and the child takes with them the values that were conveyed to them in the movie. So who is now then programming the values in the child? Disney, a pedophile company.
Right.
They are now putting values into the youth, the people that are going to be growing up in the society. And if you look at society now, what do you see? You see people who are identifying as cats. You have people identifying as dogs, you know, and this is removing the humanness from them. This is intentional. This is programming. This is mind
Yeah,
control.
yeah.
This is brainwashing. And those people will fight to the death for those values because they've been put in there through their not having a left brain. And so they are simply acting. That's
Mhm.
why when they go to these folks and interview them and they ask them some psychology and why do you believe this? What are the reasons behind? And they can't give an answer. And they literally don't know because it was programmed into them when their left brain was shut off. And that is exactly how the CIA programs monarchs, programs MK Ultra. It's the exact same way. The exact same way. And that's how the music industry works. They get this
That
beat,
was.
this rhythm
I thought
going
that
on,
was.
and they get someone
Yeah.
into the whole thing, and you're programming. And that's exactly what you see
Yeah.
happening is they entice this left brain to shut off, only have your right brain left, and then program in the right brain. And I'm telling you, it is the exact model of Auschwitz. It's the exact model of MK Ultra. And it is right now, you can hop on the internet and see it and be exposed to it. It's a total system. And that's how it works. That's how they do it. And I'm going
There
to
was
talk about
a.
that.
I was
Yeah.
listening to the part two of the Khazarian the God
Mafia.
Eaters part two of
Yeah.
two. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a fascinating part I listened to again. Well, I listened to the whole thing like 3 times, but there was this famous psychiatrist that was interacting with the FBI and how he had hypnotized people. And this was,
Estabrooks.
remember? Yeah,
That's George
Estabrooks.
Estabrooks.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
fascinating. That was just fascinating.
Oh
Would you
man. Oh my God.
perhaps
Okay. So,
elucidate
oh,
on
if
that?
you like that, bro. Oh my God. So this next video,
That was so interesting.
yes, this next video, I found an article that basically reinforced the concepts I've been talking about. I'm opening up with some Estabrooks work. Estabrooks was a psychopath. He was a psychopath.
I know.
This man would he would kidnap people, give them drugs, and program their mind, and then electroshock them to lock in the programming, and the person would walk away and have no idea they were programmed. And the story I gave you that was Tom, what was his name? Tom O'Neill. He gave that story of that guy that was killing children, and he had no memory of it. He came out of the forest where Tom gives the story in my last video I just made, and this guy comes out of the forest or whatever is happening, and he's covered in blood, and he has no idea, none,
Memory.
what has happened,
Wow.
and he
It's
had
like that
killed.
Manchurian Candidate type thing.
Yes, and it totally followed the pattern of all of the assassins that have gone after, like the guys that have killed the presidents. If you look at these Manchurian candidates, it's the same programming. Break down the left brain, get straight into the right brain, program them to go kill someone, program them to commit suicide after they're done killing that person, and then you lock it in with torture. Sexual abuse and sodomy is what they do with kids, to lock it in with torture. And then that person goes to sleep and wakes up and they have no idea it happened. None. And they will go out. This happens in one hypnotizing session. They will go out and kill the person. And then you've seen this happen in our history. They'll go out and then they'll either kill themselves or they'll just stay there and they'll get killed by the police who come in to stop them. And this person, if they don't kill them and they bring them behind bars, When they interview them, they will have no access to the personality that performed the killings. So when they talk to them, they'll pass a lie detector test because they literally have no idea that they did that because it was programmed in an alternate personality. And I am going to be getting into that programming exactly in the coming videos in how they take a person and they shut off that personality in that individual. And a person can literally go out and do these horrible, terrible, terrible things, just like a Satanist, and they will have no idea, no recollection. They'll pass every lie detector test. You will not be able to break through. It's incredible.
I think there's some kind of a natural herb in South America called devil's breath, scalamine, that causes a person
scopolamine.
to go
it's a tranquilizer.
Scopolamine. Yeah, and it was been used by covert spies to get people to go unconscious. It gives a person a terrible odor, I heard, but that's one of the side effects, which I think is good to know because I think it's just horrific.
Scopolamine. Terence McKenna talks about a story about scopolamine. So he was at some event, and as you guys know, Terence McKenna was a psychonaut. And so he was dipping into some of the scopolamine and just seeing what the effects were. Yeah, he was a psychonaut. Yeah, psychonaut. And so he was trying this out. And so one of his buddies who was at the gig with him had taken, I guess, too much or had gone overboard with it. And Terrence said, I was down in the Czar. We were down in the bazaar. We were shopping for some fruit. And I was having a conversation with this guy, and I realized that this guy thought that we were in his kitchen. And he was acting like we literally were in his kitchen. He was so far gone. And this is the mindset. That's what scopolamine is doing. It is putting a person into an alternate mindset. And when you put them in that alternate mindset, like LSD, and you torture them and abuse them, you can program them. That's what they were using LSD for. Now, LSD...
that opens a person up, like the LSD that they were using with the MK Ultra. They're using LSD, perhaps devil's breath, scalamine. Is that what it is? What does psychonaut mean? What does scopolamine? What does psychonaut mean? What is that word?
A psychonaut is a person. A psychonaut is a person who is willing to take mind-altering drugs. So, like, I've smoked DMT. I've eaten magic mushrooms. I'm an active user of cannabis. I mean, these kind of things. These are mind-opening drugs, and if you use them incorrectly, they will destroy your life. So they're just like with sugar. Sugar is absolutely delicious, but if you get addicted to it, it'll destroy your life. It'll make you obese. It'll give you diabetes, and it'll kill you. Okay, so this is life. Folks need to understand. Don't separate life into you can do this, you can't do that. When you get like that, when you get polarized like that, it makes you imbalanced. So what you need to understand is these plant medicines like magic mushrooms, like DMT, LSD even, which is created in a lab, but LSD, which is an ergot alkaloid. Okay, the whole meaning and reason for these things is to help a person break down programming. That's what they do. They erase your hard drive. And so a person who's trying to heal, say they're trying to get out of a religion, they're trying to quit smoking, they're trying to not be obese, or they're trying to lose weight or whatever. They're in a mindset that they have to get out of to be healthy. And so what the meaning, the purpose of these drugs is to help you break down that mindset so that you can be in a healthier mindset, so that you're not obese, so that you're not a drug addict. You see? But we've been trained by a fouled up DEA that basically says all of these drugs are bad and all of these drugs are good. And you got psychopaths who are telling people what's good and what's bad. And so this is what causes such incredible misinformation, misunderstanding in the world, is that people don't understand there's nothing wrong with being a psychonaut, because this person is simply utilizing methods offered by nature to be able to break out of a small mindset. Of course, if you abuse the drugs, of course, if you overuse them or any of these kind of things, if you use them illicitly, then of course they're going to harm you. Of course they are. But see, a person who goes in and does their homework, does the work to understand what scopolamine is, does the work to understand what DMT is, does their work to understand what the pineal gland is, does their work to understand what magic mushrooms are and what psilocybin and what psilocin is, and understands the chemistry that's behind this stuff, you then can utilize it as an asset to break out of your small world and become more humane, become more oriented to nature. That's exactly what cannabis does. It aligns you to nature. It aligns you to your authentic self. Yes, if you abuse it and use it until you're drooling, laying on the couch and doing nothing all day, yes, that's not a good idea. That's a bad way to use cannabis. But cannabis is also
Right.
extremely inspiring artistically. And some of the best writing I've ever done, some of the best videos I've ever done, I have been totally high. And it is because it opens your mind to a larger world and you better can convey that to others. You see? And so just like putting sugar in a
Right.
dessert, it's absolutely delicious. Enjoy the dessert. Enjoy it. It's there to be
Right.
enjoyed. There's nothing wrong with it. Have a great time. But if you eat pie every single day, you're going to get sick. You're going to get diabetes. You're going to get obese. You're abusing it. But
Right.
no one would ever see sugar as an abusive drug. You see, because they've been programmed bad.
Right.
That's the point I'm making here.
I think
There are all these
I think it's
contexts in
good
life.
for.
Yeah. Sorry. Go
I
ahead.
think it's a lot of these could be good for people who have certain balances, like medically.
Yeah.
If a person has a condition, you need a herb or something, and if one has
Yes.
um mind imbalances, do like being in a cult or something. But
Yes.
ultimately, I think we're complete as we are. But if we get sick or we're in a rut, these can really help. Like if you're in a medical
Yes.
rut, you have cancer, you look for a herb. If you're in a total funk, you go to a psychiatrist. But sometimes they're controlled by the AMA and they have limitations. So I think in terms of natural law, we should have the right to put what we want in our body. And
Bam.
informed consent is the thing. Informed consent, not censoring information. What they did to hemp is tremendously wrong. It has so many
Yes.
applications.
Yes.
It broke down mind control is the thing that they didn't like.
Bam.
Yeah, and actually, I remember
I don't even smoke
listening.
hemp. But it's too expensive for me.
Well, I
I
Grow
remember
your
but
own.
listening
I'm just
to.
saying that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I remember listening to Kathy O'Brien, and she mentioned
She's
in.
wonderful.
She's
Yeah.
amazing. During her programming, she was not allowed to smoke pot. It would, because it
Right.
completely,
I'm
as
glad you said
Chuck just
that.
mentioned, it
Yes.
just dissolves
Say
all the
that.
programming. And I totally
Right.
agree. I'm also a psychonaut, and the way I think of it is I'm an adult, and I
Yeah.
am choosing as an adult
Right.
to deprogram myself.
Exactly.
And
Hmm.
I do it as on an as needed basis. And when my children are adults, and I loved your conversation you had with your daughter. I watched that and
Yeah.
I was like, oh my
Oh,
God,
I love that.
so
I watched
amazing.
that. That was so
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Jessica.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
really
Oh my
good.
God. So yeah,
Yeah.
so like I want to have that level of like trust and with my
Mm,
adult when my children are adults, and just like share stories of, awakenings
Hmm.
and
mm.
processes when they're ready.
Oh. Yeah, that's one of the things I learned the hard way. I hid my cannabis use when my children were younger, and that was a big mistake. So learn from my mistakes. I hid it. I was still under a false context for it, and I didn't understand exactly what was happening. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, I hid it. And obviously, I don't anymore. And I smoked DMT with Jess. In fact, the first time I smoked DMT was with Jessica. And what is realized is that everyone has been really harmed by bad information. And I mean, honestly, the reason why we have SSRIs is because they've outlawed magic mushrooms, because magic mushrooms are maybe one of the greatest antidepressants that have ever been discovered. And it's basically the safest thing. I mean,
Psilocybin.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So magic mushrooms are probably one of the safest things you can put in your body, and they are amazing in breaking down barriers. Like if a person is
Hmm.
starting to say break out of a religion and they're kind of like, I don't know if I want to leave, or I'm not sure. I'm telling you, you get a good dose of some magic mushrooms going, you'll be able to break down those resistances. You'll be able to break down that fear. Magic mushrooms are
Hmm.
anti-fear, and that is something that has controlled our society is fear. And so magic mushrooms build a natural courage inside of you, not like alcohol, but in this in inspired heart sense,
Hmm.
in long term. If you, I know a number of people, and I've even at times in my life microdosed magic mushrooms, just taking a little tiny capsule every day.
Hmm.
So it's just a little bit there. And what I have found, and what
Hmm.
many others have found, is it not only is great at getting rid of headaches, but it does a great job in helping you lower your anxiety and be able to field ideas that are outside your normal context, and not in an aggressive way, but in a very calm, lucid way. And that's really another great thing. And one of the things I'd love to do down the road in my life is to have some kind of facility where we can help facilitate people taking these drugs to help them break out of their context that they're in, and to be a light to someone and helping them understand these medicines, these plants that are here on this planet are here to help you. They're here to help you connect. And you've been in a fear campaign. Cannabis has been in a 60, 70-year-long fear campaign. Same with magic mushrooms. And these substances that nature has provided that are extremely beneficial and helpful. And that is exactly why the Khazarian mafia will not let people use cannabis. That's actually the opening segment of my next video, is showing that exactly what you said. Kathy O'Brien was told, and a number, I can't remember all the names, but Jay Parker was told, never, ever, ever, ever are you to take cannabis. Never let any of your slaves, people that you control, take cannabis. That is completely outlawed in the KM. And that should be a signal to anyone that if this group who is pushing drugs into every single person they can get a hold of has said, do not ever take or use cannabis, why are they so afraid of it? Why are they not allowing this drug to be integrated? And the reason is because it makes you anti-authority. Cannabis does a great job in helping you see where you have been deceived. And when you know that you've been deceived, you no longer will buy into the deception. And that is the last thing the KM wants, is people starting to think for themselves. And that's exactly what cannabis does, is it helps you think for yourself. And that's why they fear it. It has nothing to do with health. It has nothing to do with betterment. It has nothing to do with any of that. It is completely so that they can remain in control. And that's why they've outlawed it, and that's why they refuse. I mean, even to this day, every single cannabis outlet in the United States is practicing illegally, according to the federal government, because they refuse to deschedule it from class 1. They class cannabis in the same class as heroin. They say it's just as deadly as heroin, and no one has ever died from cannabis use ever. So what you can just see in this is, notice the patterns that they're doing, that they're using to deceive you. Notice the patterns that they're using to get you into fear and anxiety, so that you won't try these substances, so that you will avoid them. And they're the very things that will help you. So that's just something, it's interesting that it just came up right now, because that is actually the opening segment for my next video, is exposing this and showing that, yes, they hate this, the cannabis, because it deprograms people. It's a deprogramming agent, for sure. Saved my marriage.
I think too, like dysfunctionality, everything has a homeostasis in terms of like what's normal and dysfunctional systems. I remember this when I did family therapy, like dysfunctional family dynamics. Because I think there was this woman named Kat. She was talking about almost like USA is like an alcohol family. You know, it's just there's so much dysfunction in so many families. But I was thinking in terms of like systems theory with family therapy, like when someone starts changing, then the homeostasis gets upset. And so if someone is starting to wake up, then that is threatening to other people because they have a certain role they feel. Like even like a minor thing like DMSO. DMSO is a wonderful thing. You've never heard of it. It's an acronym that's but it helps like you pair it with something, it helps penetrate deep into the body, but it gives off a bad odor. So I have to be careful. If I use it, I really bathe well before I go to work. But it can be like you do something changing, it can be very offensive to people because they're just not used to, people are so programmed that I think it's conscious and unconscious forces working at each other, that I think unconscious systems kind of program people to behave in a certain way. Like even like newscasters, they've taken I have this show that says Operation Mockingbird. At one time it was official, but I think a lot of these people, newscasters, they know they've internalized the propaganda. They know automatically if they say the wrong thing, And
Yeah,
so
I see them. I
anyway,
see them a lot like the entertainment figures. I see the same kind of idea, in that they act as though, or they tell you who to vote for. They tell you what to be afraid of. They tell you who to like and who not to like. And they're a programming agency. I mean, that's what they are. The entertainment systems, the media systems, they are not information to help you understand better. They are information to program you. They are information, they convey information that locks you in. And this is how you destroy a society from the inside out, is you get everyone in all these sectioned off beliefs, and then they just fight it out between each other and destroy each other. And that's exactly what the media is doing. That's exactly what music is doing. That's exactly what the government is doing. That's exactly what medicine is doing. And folks, if you just begin to step back and look at all of these empires, you will see a common thread, and that is human destruction. You will see that thread across all of these different industries, and you simply have to do research to find the patterns, and you will see it. You will see it. They are not here to help you. They are here to program you and control you. Truly.
Well,
I remember Catherine Austin Fitts. Catherine Austin Fitts was saying that the main purpose, she worked for Ronald Reagan as the assistant under HUD, and she was saying that the primary purpose of the medical establishment is the destruction of the middle class. That's how.
Yeah.
And then she said similar that the primary purpose of the criminal justice system is to keep servile working class people. And so anyway.
Well, the reason they invented the women's lib was to get another tax base. That's why they invented women's lib.
Yeah.
It wasn't to liberate any women. It was to get money from them. It was to get taxes from them and to pull them out of the family so that the government would raise the kids. Dude, people need to understand.
Yes, absolutely.
Please understand. These groups do a very good job conning people. They're very good at it. That's why people believe the Red Cross. That's why they believe it. Because that group is very good at convincing people they're here to help. And it's the same thing with medicine. It's the same thing with religion. It's the same thing with politics. They are here to control you.
Yeah.
It's not about being humane and helping society and helping others at all. And so it's people just need to snap out of the assumption, hey, the Red Cross is here to help me. Hey, religion is here to help me. Hey, my politician is here to help me. They've got to snap out of this idea of assumption and leave that behind and say, wait a minute, what is really going on here? What really happens when I believe in this stuff? And so, yeah, man, absolutely. It's so important that people do the research and figure this stuff out. It's right in front of you. Yeah.
Well, this segues well into my next question, because I know a lot of, including some of your God Eater series and other videos that you've done, have been taken down by the very platform that we're using to live stream now, YouTube. And then, you know, Kevin and I have had some videos of ours taken down, and what inspires you to be the what inspires you to tell the truth, to
persist,
to persist, to fight the Mockingjay media? Like what inspired you as you were doing this research, as you came out in what sounds like an initiation process almost with your cancer diagnosis, to awaken not only yourself but to awaken others? Like what inspired you to do that?
Yeah. Okay. So when I left Texas, I had lived in Texas. This was when I was fighting cancer. When I was working with my dad, I was in Texas, Frisco, Texas. And when I left there and I got out of the normal context that I was in, I had a lot of time to think. Living in a forest is extremely healing because it's silent. I get emotional. I got to hold this together. And so when you get in that environment, you begin to really think about yourself and about where you come from. And there's a clarity that begins to happen. And you begin to, when you get out of the context you've always been in, you begin to see more clearly. And it was the realization that all of my friends, all of my family, basically every Christian, is in the context that I was in that made me sick. And when I realized that this had affected everyone I cared about and loved, that was extremely inspiring to me, because I was like, I want these people to have the same healing experience that I've had. Not the same exact context, but the same experience of realizing where I was thinking to realizing what my perspective is outside of that thinking context. And I realized how painful it was living in that space without realizing it. People don't realize when they've been programmed like that how much pain they're living in, because they're not living as a free spirit, they're living as a bot. And so I realized, looking back on my life as a 40-year Christian, I realized I had spent my entire life tied into a system like that, and it made me inhumane. And I began to think about events. I began to think about events, decisions that I made, and my behaviors in some of the ways that I lived, that I was, without realizing it, I was hurting people. In the context of thinking I was loving them, I was actually really harming them. And when I realized that I was doing that, I knew I'm going to live differently. And so I began to do that's like I mentioned earlier, I began to do a whole lot of psychological research. How did I get caught up in that context? How did I get caught up in that belief system that would make me behave in such an inhumane way, where when people didn't think like me and didn't believe in Jesus like me, and they didn't believe in heaven and hell like me, like I actually, wanted to go after them, and I wanted to prove to them that this is real and this is the way it is. And you get, it's dogmatism, and it's very harmful, and it's inhumane, and it's not centered in love. And so the letters that I get to finally answer your question, the letters that I get from people where they say, I can see the world differently now. Thanks to your work, I can see the system that I was in, and I can more clearly and lovingly approach the world, and I'm more accepting of others because of what you've done. And when I get letters like that, and I get responses to the work that I'm doing like that, it is overwhelming. I mean, it's the biggest juice I could ever access in my life, and that inspires me to keep going. And when YouTube recently, I made another segment of the God Eaters, and I posted it, and they only let it up for like, I think it was like an hour, and they shut it down. And I got this letter from them, and they said, if you release any of this series, if you release any more movies like that, we're going to shut your channel down, and we're not going to allow you to turn it back on. Like, it will be permanently deleted. And man, I've given thousands of hours into my YouTube page. And so when that happened, I was really stuck, because I had a computer that wouldn't even access Rumble. It wouldn't load on. It was like a 20-year-old computer, and so it couldn't even load all these other social media sites. It could only load YouTube, and that's why I had been using it. And I reached a hard point, because I didn't have the money to be able to get a new computer to be able to access the sites, to change my website, to be able to upload videos. And so I was stuck. I can't upload any more videos, and I don't have the tech necessary to continue on. And so I started a GoFundMe, and I said, hey, if any of you out there, jeez, man, why can't I stop crying? I asked my folks that were watching, I said, if any of you guys out there could help me out, I'll get a different computer, and I'll keep going on this thing. And the response from people was incredible. Like, people, they were writing me the most amazing letters. It was incredible. And they totally funded my computer, and folks are still giving to me. It's incredible, and they're helping me with my life, because I'm not a wealthy person, and so they're helping me with my life. And it's like, holy shit, like, this is incredible. Like, this has turned into something I never expected, and these people are totally supporting me, and they're giving me their hard-earned money so that I can continue. And it was like, my God. And so this whole experience that has happened for the last few weeks, I've done this for about a month now, has been incredible. I mean, I cannot believe people are supporting me. It's incredible. And so that is a major inspiration. It's an incredible inspiration when people are willing to give you their hard-earned money so that you can continue to do the work. And that's exactly what's happening. And it's incredibly inspiring. I mean, every single time I get a donation, it's like, I cannot believe people are supporting me. This is incredible. So yeah, that's what keeps me going. That's how it all kind of happened. I'm gonna go get some Kleenex. I'll be right back. Sorry, hang on.
Oh, no worries. And I just want
I had
to
a
plug to
little
our
my notes as
audience.
well.
I
Yes,
just
go
want to
ahead.
plug I just want to plug to our audience that after this live stream ends, I'll be sure to include all of Chuck's channel links on my website, godislovetruthlife.com, and also his GoFundMe, which we haven't reached the goal for that
Hold on.
GoFundMe yet. So if you haven't already done so, please donate. Because as Chuck mentioned, that was a great opportunity for us to give back to Chuck. That's how I just on a whim, like I had donated and I was like, I wonder if he'll be open to like an interview maybe, even though I have like like not a huge following. But yeah, we all manifested what we wanted to manifest. Like you Chuck wanted to manifest the technology necessary to continue doing the great, work that you're doing. I, as a listener, wanted to help you manifest that. And then you came on to my small channel here to manifest what I wanted to manifest. And we're all just like lighting each other's candles. And like
That's it.
that feels fucking awesome to do that.
Connectivity will save the society. We must connect. That's why it's so important not to be compartmentalized. We must connect. A healthy human society is a connected human society. And it is when we isolate ourselves and say, this is my thing and you're not in that thing or whatever, when we do that, that leads to dysfunction, that leads to destruction, that leads to suicide, meaning the country will destroy itself. So yes, we must connect. We must connect, and we must lovingly approach each other and have some acceptance there, and just saying, I want to hear your views. I totally want to hear your views. I might not integrate all of them, but I want to hear them because you are important, because you're a human being just like me, and your value is that. Simply being a human being, that is your value. And I relate to you in the soul context because we are one and the same. We both have the same soul. We are sharing in that. And so it is very important for us to relate to one another and to not isolate from one another. And so that's why the internet, in my opinion, the internet has been the impetus to this, because the internet has connected all of us. It has united us as human beings. And it is so important for that to be the case, because the way the controllers have held us is that they've been isolating everything, and everybody is locked into those little tiny worlds. And it's very easy to control the society when everybody is locked into those little worlds, and you have trigger words that you can use to get those people to fight with one another. And that's exactly what's been happening here.
Absolutely.
And so, yes, you're right.
Neuralistic programming.
Yes.
One of my favorite series you did was Nature as Identity. Chuck, one of my favorite, because you just were, correct me if I'm wrong, Nature as Identity, doesn't that series, I think there's 3 parts. Nature as Identity that was the series you did? Correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it?
Yes, I did the series, yes.
Excellent. It helped me, it elucidated some of the problems I couldn't quite pinpoint about Christianity. I mean, from like astrotheologically, I find Christianity fascinating, but a lot of times, a lot of Christians don't know about that. They don't know about people like Steiner, but in this, you explain some of the problems with empire religion. I call it Constantinity, churchianity of 325 AD. And I thought that I got the impression that with the series on Nature as Identity, you went into that. Is that right?
I'm having trouble following that I got into that I identified what?
You were talking about the implications of 325 AD under Constantine and how that affected Christianity.
Well, I mean, that was when Christianity was finally organized. They basically took. So a lot of people think that it was the conversion of Constantine to Christianity, and that's a lie. That's not true. Constantine did not convert to Christianity. Christianity was developed to control the Roman society, because the Roman society had fragmented from all of the Cynics and the Eastern individuals that were coming in through the trade routes that opened in 0 BC. And so this is from Joseph Campbell. I learned this from Dr. Joseph Campbell. So these groups began to come into this area called the Levant. And the Levant was this melting point of all of your North European, your Eastern European, Western European. I mean, they're all coming in. The Middle East, it's all coming into this one little section. Okay, and what began to happen is all these different ideas began to flow in that began to break apart the unity of the society, because everybody started believing differently. They all started to think for themselves, like, well, I'm not going to believe what that religion is, whatever the case would be. They started to think for themselves. Okay, and this, over hundreds of years, broke down the cohesion within the growing Roman Empire. And so Constantine came along because they saw this happening. Constantine came along and they began to realize, if we unite everyone in a spiritual context, and then we are the controllers of that spiritual context, we control everyone, because they all believe in our spiritual system and that we are the authorities, meaning the Roman Catholic Church. We are the authorities of the spiritual system. And people don't realize it was the Roman Catholic Church that gave us the Bible. And the Roman Catholic Church has always been a controlling agency, and it's always been based in pedophilia. Always. From the start. 325, pedophiles. It is pedophiles that developed Western religion.
Wow.
Understand that. And that happened in 325. And the illusion is that they were converted and there was all this beautiful thing. No, the entire thing was done to put everyone into the same religious context and make everyone think that they're a sinner and that they need an intermediary in order to understand and know God. And who was that intermediary? The Catholic Church. And so they positioned themselves to be the authority of people in the spiritual context, and you can't question that. You can't question the Bible. You can't question that organization. It's just like a Roman government. You cannot question the emperor. That's why the emperor became pope. It was to basically change the costume to remain the leader. And I talk about this in the Khazarian Mafia stuff. And it had nothing to do with bettering people and freeing people. It had nothing to do with saving anybody. It had nothing to do with educating. None of that. It's all lies. The whole thing was developed to basically con people into this very tight religious sect, cult, and then only allow them. I mean, that's what happened with the Crusades. They literally justified going out and killing people because they didn't believe like them. I mean, this is psychosis. And this became the prevailing religion that still rules America, folks. And the whole thing was made by pedophiles. And that's what people don't understand. And so, there's a certain context to be able to say that. But my point here is that entire event that happened with Constantine is a total freaking fabrication. The entire thing was set up to be a controlling agency. What they saw was Rome is fragmenting. Rome is falling apart. We must do something to get control of these people, because they're not going to stay under our allegiance. They're not going to send their kids to be in our armies because they don't believe in what we're doing. So we have to do something to bring all these people back under control, and that we are the authority. And they invented church. They invented the Pope. They invented the Bible. This whole thing was invented out of astrotheology. The 12 disciples are planets, bro. Like the sun is God in astrotheology. People don't realize the entire context of nature, understanding of the world, and nature realization was completely pornographied and put into a religious context. And they took astrotheology, which is actually quite an elucidating idea. It's very much aligned to the idea of the resonance that occurs when you're born, and all the planets and all the stars have a resonance, and that goes into you as a forming baby in your mother, and that affects your personality, that affects your drives, that affects your likes and dislikes. So there's real knowledge to be available there. But they did not want to convey that to people. They wanted to put them into a system. You believe in this way. We will give you the book to read. We will put the words in that book, and that is the authority. Ignore any of these other authorities. We are the final say when it comes to God, and only through our belief system can you access God. And you believe that, or you're going to burn in hell. And the last time I checked, any loving person does not put ultimatum on somebody to get them to decide something. You never put a person into an ultimatum to get them to decide a life decision. And that's exactly what it does to this day. It puts people into this crisis moment where it's like, if I don't believe this, I'm going to go to hell. So I have to believe this or I'm screwed. That is programming. That's mind programming. That's manipulation. I mean, folks, see this for what it is. This is manipulation when you tell people this book is your authority and you can't believe anything else. Folks, that's manipulation. That's not what a loving person does. That's not what a
Right.
loving society does. They don't come into you and say, hey, you believe
Right.
like us or we're going to kill you. You believe like us, you're going to go to hell. That is not what a loving society does. And so that's another illusion that I'm trying to break people out of, is that whole thing that happened with Constantine and that whole lie that everyone is bought into. Sorry for the break.
Right. No,
Yeah,
I
I
love
think there's
it.
even
And
a
I think,
constellation in the heavens. I think
go ahead.
you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going
Well, I
to
was gonna say I
say
think there's this
that,
constellation.
go ahead, Kevin.
There must be a delay when I start.
There's a delay with you, Kevin. There's not a delay with me
I
and
think
Jerry,
there's
but
a
there's a delay with you. Yeah.
Oh, there is. Oh, okay. I appreciate you saying that. Okay, there's this constellation in the heavens. I think it was what was his name? That Joseph Farrell would often no, not Joseph Farrell, but Robert um Jordan Maxwell would often refer to him. But he got his honorarium in astrotheology, but he was talking about how there's in a constellation in the heavens of a baby born in a stable in a manger, and I think that that to me helped bring
Interesting.
up, because when I think of Christmas, I think about the Christ child being born in a manger. That brought to life that to me in a wonderful
Interesting.
way.
Interesting.
So sometimes it's nice
Interesting.
when he can bring to life something that's been concretized
Hidden. Yeah.
and yet bring it to life in a new way. Yes, go ahead, Jerry.
Oh, I was just going
You're
to
going to
sort
say
of
something, Jerry.
widen the lens a little bit and talk about, whether it's religion as an authority, government as an authority, scientism as an authority, teachers and education as authority. The problem is authority. The problem is um externalizing one's own power outside of oneself. And if
Mm.
people can um dissolve these illusions of authority that they've built in their lives and be their own sovereign being,
Mm.
we'll see a different society, you know?
Yeah, without any doubt. And that's, I mean, to me, that's the whole point of the Great Awakening, is all of us expanding, all of us opening, all of us really realizing. I have been in a con my whole life. That's what people need to realize. I've been totally manipulated by these groups, and understandably, I'm right there with you. I was raised in the same world that you are, my friend, the same world. And I was in the cons. I believed all that stuff. I did as I was told. I obeyed. I completely understand. I'm not standing here saying I'm this high and mighty and never fell for that. I mean, I completely fell for that stuff. And so the whole point of this Great Awakening is really a humanistic sense, and that is to bring out the humanness in people, to bring out the compassion. That's what makes you human. It's the compassion that is within you, that identity that you see in others, the identity you see in the tree, the identity you see in the planets, the identity you see in your mother. This is the common identity for all of nature. And this is what is going to bring about understanding, is realizing that it's not a context that you can put it in, because nature doesn't fit in a book. It's going to be through experience that you're going to find understanding, not through a movie, not through a book, not through a person. You're going to find it through your own experience. And so, experiencing that book, experiencing that person, experiencing that event, yes, those are all important, but they are not the thing. The thing is outside of words, outside of anything you can name. And so you just are getting closer to it when you expose yourself to all these different aspects, because as a human being, it's that compassion that's going to bring to you understanding, love, and wisdom, and all this stuff that you're seeking for fulfillment. That's going to come through your compassion, through your heart. That's what the heart chakra is for. It's to link the bottom three chakras, which are all about the physical stuff, with the top three chakras, which are all about the spiritual stuff. And the heart is the turning point, is the key. It's the key element, and it allows you to relate these two unrelated spaces directly and see the commonality between them. And this heart-centered idea is really the key, because that's the key to your humanness, is this compassion that you have, this identity. That's why I named my series Nature as Identity, because when you relate and identify with nature, you're relating to your source. You're relating to your source, Jerry, your source, Kevin, your source, listener. All of us have the same source, this animating force that is within us. And this will ignite your compassion because I see you in me and I see me in you. And when we see that kind of a thing, we identify with each other. There's nothing but love that's going to be coming out of that. There's nothing but love and compassion. And I want to be a light to you because you're a light to me because I'm a light to you. It's just this giving and taking. Exactly what you mentioned earlier, Jerry, is us connecting together. And that happens through the soul. That happens through the intrinsic aspect that none of us can name. And so we talk about it. We talk about it in the religious context. We talk about it in political context. We're talking about it, right? But none of us can fully name it. And that's why it's so important to have all these different experiences so that you can integrate to then see what can't be seen, to understand what can't be understood. And that's the enigma that you are and the enigma that nature is. You see, and this can't be put into words. And so that's why it's so important for us to connect and share this enigma with each other. And this will ignite us as a society and motivate us in a human sense for human values, meaning compassion and love. If that makes sense. I hope that makes sense.
It does. And I wanna ask you this question because I find this in my work a lot. We know about the Khazarian mafia. We know about the satanic ritual abuse, the systems of control in the media, in religion, in government, in science, in all these aspects of our society. How do we encourage people not to be black pilled? How do we encourage them to move past this knowledge onto, as you just said, the knowledge of source and connection and love and nature and how the answer is within? Like, how do we help people bridge that gap? Because I'm finding that even in our sort of truth, freedom, spiritual community that we're all part of, people become depressed. People feel overwhelmed by these systems of control and the millennia that these control systems have been in existence. And I love what you said in one of your videos. I think it was in your Human Origins series about how, we're light beings and how, origins don't matter, essentially. But basically, like, I would love to hear your thoughts. Like, how do you, like, if you're talking to someone in our community or not, just in general, who's black pilled, like, how do you get them out of that?
Show them patterns. Show them patterns where there is consistently anti-human agenda at work. Show them the patterns that within these people who claim to be beneficent, who claim to be philanthropists that are here to help you. Show them the patterns in that person's behavior that renders an entirely different context of what that person is conveying. It's sort of like, it's the same way. How do you convince someone that the Red Cross is corrupt? Well, you begin to do some digging, you find the videos that show some of the activities that the Red Cross is engaged in. Let's take Haiti, for instance. There's been basically no help that's ever gone to Haiti. Like, all this money, I mean, hundreds, maybe even billions went into whatever it was to help Haiti. And they built, like, what, I think it was 6 huts or something. I mean, they didn't do anything for these people at all. And there was hundreds or dozens of millions of dollars that went into that. Okay, well, that right there can show you, well, they're not transparent. I mean, if you ask the Red Cross for transparency, they're like the U.S. government. They're not going to give you any transparency. And everything you'll get will be redacted. Everything that matters will be redacted. Okay, when you show people patterns like that, they'll be like, well, wait. I mean, if they were truly authentic and they were kind, they would be completely transparent. Like, they would show you, hey, we built this. These are the families that we affected. Here are the thousands of people's lives that we changed, and this is all that we did to build their community. This is everything, and you'll see. Okay, well, you're doing a great job. Okay, awesome. Then that means that they're probably a good enterprise. But when you notice that nothing's being done, the money just disappears. The poverty remains. No help is provided. Right there, you can see. Well, that's messed up. Here's another great example. Just recently in England, they convicted a person who posted on Facebook jail time stuff that was anti-government, like the Facebook didn't like. They put him in jail. Another person, a person who raped multiple rapes on 5-year-olds, was given probation. Probation. They didn't even go to jail. And they sodomized children. Okay, this will show you right there. okay, that government, when they say they're here to help you, they are not here to help you. And this is how you immediately awaken someone, is to show them the dysfunctional patterns. And that's exactly what my book does for Christianity. That's exactly what my Khazarian Mafia does for the Khazarian Mafia. It shows you the patterns that are illicit, that are not helpful, that are harmful. I show you in my book, the psychology of Christianity harms you. It harms you. And I show you psychologically how it harms you. And so until a person sees that, they will never believe you when you say Christianity harms you. They will never believe you. You must show them the psychology that renders, oh, that's what it does. And when they see that, they will leave immediately. They will leave immediately because you're a human being. You have compassion, and you will have compassion on yourself. And you'll realize, when I say that about myself, when I call myself a sinner, when I say I'm separated from God and I have to have a religion to have a relationship to God, that is harmful to me as a person. That is harmful to me in the intrinsic sense, because it disassociates me from the natural. And the natural is that everything's united. You are born united. There is no separation. And having the idea that you are separated leads to dysfunctional thinking. The very reason why I'm no longer close to my father, the very reason, is the religion. And that shows you right there, if a religion does that to someone, if a government does that to someone, if medicine does that vaccine to someone, that right there will tell you instantly that that organization is not in my good interest. They are not here to help me. They are here to control me. They are here to harm me. They are here to do ill will towards me. And because these are all inherited, in other words, we have grown up with them, it is so hard to see the truth. Because you have grown up in that context. Like, that is all you know. And when that is the case, I mean, think of how hard it is to walk away from that. I mean, honestly, think of how hard it is.
Absolutely.
I mean, when I was a Christian, it took me 5 years to finally admit I'm not a Christian. 5 years to have those words come out of my mouth publicly. I am not a Christian. I am not a sinner. I am not separated from God. Having the courage to do that is, I mean, it is impossible when you are a Christian. You literally have to leave. And so that is what's going to give people courage, is finding the patterns, seeing them, and then the compassion, the heart in them is awakened, because they realize that's not right, putting that person in jail for a Facebook comment and putting that person under probation and a free man raping kids. That's not okay. And that will immediately dislodge a person from believing the UK government has anything to do with helping people. They don't. It's the same as the US government. Has nothing to do with helping you. Everything to do with controlling you and taking your money. That's exactly what they're there for. So yeah, that's what's going to help awaken people when they're in a really dark place. Show them the patterns. Because when you get into a theological argument with a Christian, there's no good that's going to come out of that. You must approach them psychologically. You have to approach them from that perspective, because Christianity cannot answer for its own psychology. It can't. You cannot be psychologically sound and be a Christian at the same time. You can't. You can be a nice person. You can be a loving person, giving person, all that kind of stuff. But psychologically, your fundamental will be messed up as long as you think you're a sinner. As long as you think you're separated from God without the religion, your psychology will be messed up. And you won't understand why. That's all the time I do that with Christians. They don't understand why they are the way that they are. My stuff will show you that. It will show you why you think like that, and why, as a Christian, it's detrimental to you.
I think Kevin might be frozen. But
So,
oh,
can you hear me?
There you go.
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I had a question as far as how about the idea of original sin as it relates to the problem with nature. How original sin
you mean how is there evil in nature?
Fundamental questions, but as a result, there's a lot that goes out the window.
Okay, I think I got pieces of
how the original sin answers certain questions. My concern is the problem of original sin and nature as corrupt.
Okay.
How about
okay.
talking
Okay.
about
Yes.
that?
Yes. Okay. All right. So first of all, the best way to understand this is understanding the world outside of a conflict-oriented idea and into a conflict and relation. What is it? I'm sorry. You're wanting. Why can't I think of the word? Anyway,
Relational?
when you understand the world through conflict, you're always
Duality,
going to see the world at war.
dualism.
And I think you, Kevin. I keep hearing you cut in, and so I don't know if you're trying to say something or what.
No,
I
I'm
don't know if
not
I
trying
should
to say
talk or.
anything. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was talking about dualism. Is it dualism you're referring to?
Okay, so dualism is an illusion.
Dualism.
Sin is an illusion. These are illusions because they try and contextualize something that can't be put into context. So if you approach the world through a
Yes.
conflict-oriented idea, you will always approach
Okay.
the world as though there's some kind of battle to win, a side to choose, a fight to fight. All right, that is not a human approach. That is a gray approach. That is
Right.
an inhumane approach because you're trying to understand and relate to the world through conflict, but it's through through contrasts. Okay, that's how understanding is found, through contrasts. So when you take the idea of sin and you say, okay, sin doesn't exist, sin is a con. Sin is a way to get people to believe that bad behavior is called sin. Whereas bad behavior or inappropriate behavior is due to a lower perspective. You don't see the perspective, and so you behave in a lower capacity because you don't understand the larger capacity at work. So when you understand nature through conflict, like the universe is in battle with itself, see, you'll never understand the universe. What you need to understand is that there is both good and there is evil in the universe. In the same way, there is both good and there is evil in God. These are all a part of the larger context. And so a part of life is illusion. A part of life is mistakes. That's a part of life. There's nothing wrong. Nothing needs to be fixed. This is your awareness growing. And as your awareness grows, it's painful. And you will go through painful events in your life in order to grow. That's why the most painful events you experience in your life are where you grow the most. It's because pain is an essential element to life. It's an essential element to understanding. And so when you say that pain is wrong, like evil is wrong, sin is wrong, that's the wrong context. You will misunderstand its role. The role of evil, the role of pain is to educate you, not to condemn you. It's to educate you so that you understand, oh, when I think in that lower context, I have a worse life because I harm myself and I harm others. That's not a good idea. So I want to have a larger picture so that I won't make such stupid decisions. And why do we make stupid decisions as youths? Because we don't know any better. We don't have enough life experience to know, hey, it wouldn't be a
Right.
good idea to follow that, or hey, it wouldn't be a good idea to do that, because you're too dumb when you're young to know that. But as you get older and you go through evil, you go through pain, you go through the aspects of life, you wisen up and you make less and less and less poor decisions because your expansion, your consciousness expansion has grown and grown and grown. And so that's why when you think you're a sinner, you never expand, you never grow, because every single day when you wake up, guess what? You're a fallen sinner. Thank God for Jesus and you're saved, but you're a fallen sinner. And when you wake up every day thinking that, you're prone to wander, prone to leave the God you love, you see, you're going to go in that direction because of epigenetics. You will be pulled in that way. You will act like a sinner
Yes.
because you believe you're a
That's
sinner.
a good point. Really good.
A
I like
sinner
that.
acts like a sinner because they think they are a sinner. And so, of course, you're going to go out and do sinful things because you think you're a sinner. But
Right.
see, you'll understand when you wake up and you don't think that I'm a sinner, but you just think, hey, I might make some mistakes today. I'll do my best not to, but that's the way it happens. I'm going to keep on going in life. There's no anxiety. I don't have to be forgiven. I don't have to be saved. I don't have all these spiritual mechanics required in order to understand, you see? And so when I don't approach the world in that misunderstanding, I will be able to walk into the world a better person than I was the day before. But when I think I'm a sinner the next day. And I'm always having to fight that. You see, it's a bad psychology. But that's the psychology at the center of Western religion. And all of these people see the world as a conflict-oriented enterprise. And as long as people see the world as a conflict-oriented enterprise, they will think there is a war to win. They will think there is a side to choose. They will think there is a heaven and hell. They will think all these crazy, nutty illusions that totally destroy their life. Because nature is not a conflict-oriented reality. It's contrasts. It's contrasts. It's both good and evil.
Right.
It's both. There's nothing wrong with a planet exploding. That's part of life. That's part of the universe. There's nothing wrong with things happening that are terrible to you. That's a part of life. That's how you're going to grow. If you reject these things or think you have to be forgiven or think you have to be saved, you will never learn the lesson. You will never learn the lesson. You will never learn the lesson when you can dismiss it with a crutch like forgiveness. You will learn the lesson when you accept I made the bad decision and only my psychology and my rethinking myself will save me, will keep me from making that decision again. You don't need to be forgiven. You don't need any of that stuff. You just simply need to psychologically evaluate yourself so that you then understand, oh, that's why I made that bad decision. I'm not going to make that bad decision again. It's like when I had cancer. I got cancer because of toxin exposure. I got cancer from the food I was eating. I got cancer from the toiletry items, the deodorants and shampoos that I was using that were full of aluminum. This is how I contracted cancer. And so nothing needs to be forgiven. I just simply need to, I need to make a better decision with what I eat. I need to make a better decision in what I put on my body. I need to make a better decision in the things that I think and the people that I surround myself with. And that will save me. That will do the work. Not praying. I don't need to pray to be saved. I need to be participating to be saved. That's how I save myself, is through participating. Not praying and wishing that evil will go away. Not praying and wishing that the devil will be destroyed. That is not going to lead you anywhere. That just leads to more conflict. Understanding that evil is a present part of life. That is life. The contrast of good and evil is life. That's the context of it. And so if you get caught in one side or caught in the other, you remain trapped. So the whole idea to not be trapped is to not be tied down with the golden chains of your proper beliefs or the iron chains of your misfortune. Release the chains. You're bound either way.
Well, how about
there's no chains. The chains you put on are the chains, your beliefs you put in your head that don't allow you to see a larger perspective, that tie you down in the name of goodness, in the name of Christianity. You're still tied down and you will never grow. If you want to expand and grow, you have to stop thinking that you're a sinner when you wake up. You have to stop thinking you need to be forgiven. You have to stop thinking that my God is the only right God and all your gods are wrong. That is a fouled up, messed up way of thinking. And that's why psychologically Christianity can't defend itself. Because when you take it apart psychologically, it is destroyed instantly. That's why if someone watches or listens to my book that I've released, if you actually apply the psychology I put in my book, it actually becomes easy to walk away from Christianity because you see its dysfunction. You see how it harms you. You see how it separates you from other people. And you see how that is not a humane way to live. Seriously. And so, yes, that is
also,
basically where I'm coming from.
Well, what I appreciated learning was natural law. How about do no harm, don't steal?
Right.
That to me is,
those are human qualities.
So basic.
That's called compassion.
Don't steal, don't harm others.
Yeah.
That's the law of
that's it.
Right. And I think
to
also
me that is the law of the universe. The universe I know of, the biggest,
the betterment of others, the betterment of ourselves, the betterment of the world. I mean, what could be more beautiful of a concept to approach life? I simply want to better myself, better the world, better others. I want to be a part of the solution. I don't want to be part of the problem. Well, I promise you, as long as you think you're a sinner waking up every morning, you're part of the problem because you're not a sinner. And that brings down the society when you preach that, when you tell other people you're a sinner and you need to be saved. You are bringing down the energy of the society talking like that. That is not a good idea. And you asked earlier, Jerry, when we first start, that's the kind of thing that comes between me and my dad. Because I see what he's doing. I understand he's a great guy. I understand he wants to help. I get it. My dad does not have an ill will in his body. My dad is one of the kindest men I have ever known. Okay, so that's not the issue. The issue is psychology. What are you telling these people? Because what you're telling these people will harm them. I understand you want to love. I understand you want to spread the good news. I get it. I get it. But look at the psychology of what you're doing, because what you're doing does not psychologically align to a humane approach to life, to a compassion-oriented approach to life. Because I have no compassion on myself when I wake up thinking I'm a fallen creature, or I'm a saved creature that's still fallen. You see what I'm saying? And so this is the pernicious nature that is inside of religion that people don't see, because they only see the little bit of truths that it has, and they don't realize the larger perspective. It's actually detrimental. So you just need to integrate a few things that are coming out of that Christian context, but the vast majority are not going to be applicable to this great awakening we're walking into. Does that make sense?
It does. And for those that are listening that aren't aware, as Chuck mentioned, he has his entire book in audio format, video
Yeah, I read the
format
whole
for
thing.
people. Yeah,
Yes.
so I started listening to it, and yeah, all these ideas. And there was a comment
That's
in the
awesome.
chat about, is it wrong to be Christian? I don't think that's what Chuck
No.
is saying. I
No.
think there's, as if we talked a little bit earlier about how there can be benefits, but there's an insidious, as you mentioned, psychological aspect that
Yes.
is harming us as a
Yes.
whole.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's what we're talking about. And
Yes.
and I think the bigger picture again is the belief in authority, whatever that authority is. And it's not limited to Christianity. It's not
Right.
limited to religions. It's in every fucking aspect of our fucking lives.
Yeah.
And
Because we've all
so
been made into fanatics. We've all been made into fanatics. People are medical fanatics, governmental fanatics, religious fanatics, and that's what happens. And that's what you get, a fanatic society. That's what happens when everybody gets separated and isolated, their own little beliefs in their own little world. That you have a society of fanatics. And as long as you have a society of fanatics, you're never going to have equilibrium. You're never going to have a context that is calm. It's always going to be everybody oppressing on everyone else. And see, this is where everybody has to take a step back, pull back. That's where cannabis is so helpful. It helps you pull back. Okay, wait a minute. Chill out, calm down. Start thinking this through here, son. Start thinking through what you're actually thinking and saying here. Take some moments to psychologically evaluate yourself and contemplate. What are you actually believing? What are you actually saying? Because when you begin to get a better context like that through just self-evaluation, you become more humane, because you realize that's messed up, thinking that that person is worshiping the wrong God because they're not worshiping the God I worship. You see, that's messed up. But when you're in it, you
It
think,
is.
but my God is so loving, and my God is so much powerful, and my God knows, and this was passed down from ages past, and these people knew, and they gave us this. You're a fanatic. You're a fanatic. Stop. That's inhumane activity. Stop. And you begin to realize, and this is why I got so emotional earlier, is I realized that I was a fanatic my whole life, and I steamrolled people, man. I steamrolled them because I knew what the answer was. I was worshiping the right God. I was a forgiven sinner, and I'm going to save the world. And I just steamrolled people. I mean, I don't have time, but if I told you the stories of some of the things I did, especially in regards to when I got married and the people I allowed and didn't allow at the marriage ceremony, I realized I'm a nutcase, because I didn't allow certain people to attend because they were Satanists or they were evil or they were witches or whatever the case. And I was totally caught up in a totally messed up religious context, and I behaved inappropriately, and it was wrong what I did. It was wrong the way I behaved. And that's why I'm so passionate now about what I'm doing. And it's simply to open up perspective and to help people see a larger context than what they have been in. And that is essential for us not to be a fanatic society, a crazy society that is just lashing out at other people that don't think like us. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, I wanted to say something. Well possible. I think that there might be a reason why that's so. If we're dysfunctional and we don't know natural law, and we think we have self-loathing about ourselves, then we need to be governed by a dictator or a savior. We need government.
Exactly.
And government means,
and that's exactly right. That's exactly right, Kevin,
evil.
because every sinner thinks they need an authority, because a sinner can't be trusted. A sinner can't be trusted. And so a sinner must have an authority. Because
Yes.
what does the Christian say? If you aren't taught the way of Christianity, you will become an evil person. You will be a philanderer when you grow up. You will be an alcoholic because you don't have the power of Jesus. You don't have the power of God in your life to keep you from that. That is psychosis, folks. That's psychosis because that power is within you. You have all the power you need inside of you, and it is belief systems that keep you from that power. And that is what must be understood, because that is not what is understood by someone who thinks they have the answers. And every Christian knows they have the spiritual answer. They know it, and they know that they're right. And they know that anyone who doesn't think like that is wrong and is to be what? Obfuscated. Get away from me, Satan, because that person doesn't think like they do. And so again, that is what? That's inhumane. That separates us, that causes conflict, that causes anxiety. And that's exactly what these institutions are doing. And that's why my approach is, like you've been mentioning earlier, Kevin, natural law. The natural, don't harm one another. Love yourself, and the answers are within you. Identify with others, and you will find love for them. Love is not a choice. You can't love your neighbor because you choose one day, I'm going to love my neighbor because I'm a Christian now. No. You love your neighbor because you identify with them. And how are you going to identify with your neighbor if they're not a Christian and you are? You see, there's not going to be love there because you can't identify with them, because you insist that the world be the way you say, and that person is never going to be able to contextualize with you. And there's separation, and then what happens? Hate begins to form, resistance begins to form, and there's no friendship, there's no commonality there. You see, right there, you can see this stuff. It's so plain in front of you, but until you're courageous enough to actually open your eyes and see it, you'll never see it. And that's why my father will never be close with me again, because he will never open his eyes wide enough to see a larger world of Christianity. He's going to die a Christian. That's okay. I love my father. That's completely fine. He will simply die unaware. He will not be aware that there is a larger world than what Christianity offers. He will die ignorant of that. That's okay. I love him. It's okay. No degradation, no putting down, no shaming, no that. That's fine. That's where my dad is at. That's the life he wants. He wants a world surrounded by Jesus. He wants a world based in Christianity. That's fine. But that's going to be a very small world. And people who awaken to a larger world are not going to be able to relate to someone who insists that the world must constellate Jesus, that the world must constellate Christianity. You see, you become irrelevant instantaneously in the Great Awakening if you try and carry that baggage across the line. You won't be able to. That's why I'm here. That's why others like me are like Mark Passio. That's why we're here to help people see you are in a very tight context. You must escape that if you are ever going to be relatable to the world and relatable to the nature that you are. Because nature doesn't fit in a religion. It doesn't fit in any context. It is all things. It is all that is, you see? And that doesn't fit in a book. It doesn't fit in a belief. There are many beliefs around it. There are many ways of understanding. There's many ways to skin a cat. And so it's the same thing with this thing. It's the same thing, religion. It's the same thing with you. It's the same thing. And an approach has to be made of one of, I'm going to objectively approach this without any attachments. I'm not going to demand anything of life. I'm not going to force nature to have to be a Christian enterprise. I'm not going to force it to be an Islamic enterprise. I'm not going to force it to be a Buddhistic enterprise. I'm not going to do that, because that is a heinous thing to do to something that is outside of those contexts. And just like pre-labeling you because of what you look like, or pre-labeling you because of your beliefs, that is a heinous thing to do, because that is not what that person is. That is not what nature is. It is outside of these contexts, and you simply relate to it through experience. There are no words for it. It's like a painting. How do I relate to a painting? Not through words, by looking at it, by experiencing it, and seeing the connections that it has that are outside the words. That's life. And life is the same way. There are no words for it. So experience it without fear. Do not cling to anything. Do not be afraid. And boldly walk into the world as a fearless individual that doesn't have a leader, but that the impetus comes from the heart, from within, because that's where your compassion is. And that's what makes us human. Sorry, I don't mean to be preaching. I don't mean to be going so long. Sorry.
No, I fucking love it. And honestly, like, on a reincarnation sort of intergenerational endings and beginnings level, I feel like you're continuing the evolutionary soul journey that your father started.
Wow, that's an amazing concept.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I'm getting literal, like, ancestral chills hearing you.
that's really amazing. That's really interesting because yeah, because that you've just thrown me for a loop. Thank you for that. It very well could be. I totally subscribe to the work of Rupert Sheldrake. I'll tell you a little story. This relates to what you just said, and then we got to close it off because I am wasted. So he tells a
he's
story
awesome.
of how I love Rupert. So
Yes.
he has this idea called morphogenesis or morphogenesis.
Uh-huh.
And the idea is that if you train, let's say like you have a specific race of mice and you train them to run a maze in Australia, and the mice have relatives or mice that are related to that race that are in America, and you put that same maze to the mice that are of the same relationship as the ones that figured the maze out in Australia, the ones in America will figure it out faster than the mice that were in Australia. Different mice. But it's the morphogenesis, the connection between the overmind of the soul, between these mice that is causing the ones that are figuring out the maze for the first time to have an intuition there. And for some reason, they go right instead of left when they're trying the maze. And they do that because there's an intuition that's coming out of the ones that figured it out before them. Okay, and what Rupert's point is that as time goes on, it gets easier and easier to move into these types of patterns. And so with my father, who spent his entire career as a preacher, an entire career as an author, and an entire career trying to help people to grow spiritually, I mean, there are many of those things that are very similar to what I'm trying to do here, because
Yeah.
I'm in a public situation and I am bringing together these ideas and contexts that help people to see a larger world. And so it's epigenetics right there, or morphogenetics right there, because my father has tread the path already in front of me. So it's interesting you bring that up, Jerry, because it very well may be the case that there's some Rupert Sheldrake going on here, and that I am falling into a pattern that my father has already run, but I'm in a different context and a different society than what my father was in. And so my approach is maybe more relatable. Maybe it's more in context and in cohesion with the current understanding of life and society, because any type of understanding of the world must be in the context of its science, must be in the context of its medicine, must be in the context of its spirituality. Because those worlds were very different 3,000 years ago when Christianity was invented than they are now. And so being relatable to the society is very important. And it just may be that because my father, who just retired, has left what he was doing, and right now I'm right at the beginning of what I'm doing, it very well may be that those things are related. And it very well may be there's some morphogenesis going on that, until you mentioned that, Jerry, I wasn't really aware of. So that very well may be the case. It might be.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to close and say thank you so much.
Thank you.
As I mentioned,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
yes,
Thanks,
I
y'all.
mentioned while we had a little brief intermission that I'll be sure to link all your channels and your GoFundMe. We
Yeah.
have not hit the goal for the GoFundMe, so for
Yeah.
those that are listening, please consider donating.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
and yeah, just
Thank
like
you.
on a like light being to light being level, it felt really good to give, and then for you and to receive
Thank
that
you.
light back.
Thank you.
This has been a wonderful experience.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Thank you so much, Kevin. I have had a great time.
you.
Thank you so much for spending the time. It's been amazing, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yay. All right. Take care, everybody.
Okay, we'll see you later. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.